this computer. The floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Norton.
A pleasure. So from me, good morning. It's actually 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm in a hotel near Toronto. And meanwhile, our host is in Australia at 8:30 plus at night. It's amazing. And then everybody else is somewhere in between. I'm in Toronto because the pandemic has gradually eased in Canada, and we've been up to see somebody who we haven't seen for 2 years, who is a very old friend. So it's just a chance to kind of finally meet face to face, which has been lovely. I'm talking about woodwind pieces. I've done quite a lot of woodwind music over the years. Micro jazz started for piano, but ended up being for lots of instruments, and the flute, clarinet, oboe, bassoon, alto saxophone, tenor saxophone have all come out over the years and have gradually made their way into examination syllabuses. But more recently, the concert collections as well, and I'll be talking a bit about those, as well as making some references to other things. So I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Yes, I can. Or can I? Yes. So that's what's happened recently, is that the concert collections have all been repackaged. In fact, everything of mine is being repackaged by Boozy and Hawkes. The reason for that is the original books, the concert collections in particular, not microjazz, but the concert collections had CDs with them. And of course, people nowadays don't really play CDs. So they basically reissued the books with different covers, and that's what they look like. And they're meanwhile putting all the backing tracks and accompaniments and versions and things up on Spotify and iTunes and all the other digital platforms. So this is concert collection for flute, and I was quite pleased. And the piece we're looking at is called Drunken Sailor, which is from grade 7. It was written in 2006, so if you think back, that's quite a long time ago. I think it was 15 years ago. So I was only like 12 years old at the time. And there's 15 pieces in the concert collection, and what you may or may not know is the concert collection are all based on famous pieces. I mean, so I've used existing tunes and done my own take on them, and so Drunken Sailor is my own take on what you would do with the Drunken Sailor. It's part of the folk section of this book. And it's got 4 categories in each book: spirituals, folk songs, classical themes, and songs by Stephen Foster. So if you're trying to do a little program, like a concert, this is a great selection to choose from. I think they're probably all about grade 7 to 8, but maybe you'll be able to tell me if they're higher or lower than that, but that's a kind of general region. So what I thought I'd do is show you what the first one sounds like. But before I go further, the new look is, I'm just mentioning the fact that they're on digital platforms. If you look for my name on the Spotify site, for instance, I've got an artist page, and all the concert collections for Woodwind are there. And what you get is you get a performance with backing track, and then you get the backing track only. So if your student wants to try and play them with backing tracks using the ABRSM software to slow them down if need be, that's where you'll find them on Spotify. So here's Drunken Sailor, and the person who recorded these for me was a flute player from Manchester in the north of England called Nicola Hunter, and I think this is an absolutely exemplary performance. So I'm going to play you the Drunken Sailor, which is the one featured on all the digital platforms, so you can actually have a demonstration recording. And if you're teaching this piece, one of the first things you can do is actually say to people, go to Spotify and have a listen to the performance, because Mr. Norton does approve it. Isn't that terrific? And preparing for an examination, start by getting your student to listen to the recorded performance, because I think you'd agree that's a very spirited performance, and she's doing all the things that are written in the score very, very accurately. And it's a very funky backing as well, so it's quite a combination. And you bring the house down if you try and get a student to play that with the backing track for a live audience. I think you'd find that would go down very well. Some common sense tips about preparing this for examinations. These are all things which will apply to all the Woodwind things. The opening thing that's played is a 3-note grace note. It's like blup, so it's actually make those grace notes as fast and light as you can and aim for that main note. So don't let the student get sort of like with piano, don't let them get tangled up in the grace notes too much, but keep them very light and fast. Check the accents. There's a lot of accents in this piece, and it's worth trying to go through and just check where they are and make sure that you do actually play the accents as they're written. And the non-accented notes should be played more lightly, basically. So it's again a matter of looking closely at the score and thinking, I'm going to accent where it says accent and shape nicely where it doesn't say accent. And shape each phrase, of course, as well as you can. Look at the overall dynamics. The loudness marking in this piece is double forte right at the end, but you could go even further and actually end up with triple forte practically. It's a very high register A's there, which you can really be screaming up there. And the lowest level is MF, but you could take that down even further as well. So, but the dynamics are quite wide-ranging, but I'm saying make them even more extreme. I think the flute player on the recording does that. So there's some starting points which I think are applied particularly to this piece, and there's more. Just try and get that out of the way. I don't think I can, or can I? Anyway, the level of detail in the articulation I've put it is very impressive, and you could practice each figure separately, concentrating on getting the phrasing just right. And I've got a picture of some of the main figures in this piece. So look at that verb, da-da-da, da-da-da. So you've got actually an accented note, a slur, and a staccato note on the third note of the group. And it's quite a good exercise with a metronome, perhaps, to get the student to just play these phrases in isolation and articulate them. So you can see the level of articulation and the level of detail is actually very, very specific, and therefore that's why I'm suggesting that you actually look at each phrase and actually treat it as a little technical exercise, you might say. But you can see that's quite a lot of flute techniques involved there. And I haven't even mentioned the flutter tonguing. There is flutter tonguing for one bar, which is really good fun as well, which students perhaps might not have come across before. So that's another suggestion, is to isolate the phrases and just try and get each phrase dead right. If you put all this articulation and phrasing together exactly as written in the piece, you'll be doing it right. I say that to people all the time, but it's surprising how often people don't do it. And I've got a picture of a satisfied student coming up. Would you like to see that? Here we go. So there you go. And one thing I would suggest is if you like that piece, which I hope you do, that you might like to look at other pieces in the same book, because in fact it's a very, very charming selection of pieces. That's a folk song, but the spirituals are particularly nice, and it's just worth browsing on Spotify, if you like, through that album and hearing what they sound like. A little bit of analysis here, which you need to do for examination sometimes. The piece is in D major and 4/4, and it's a funky hornpipe. It's a funny thing to say, isn't it? You can hear there the background is quite funk, and it uses the full range of the flute for very dramatic effect. The structure of the piece is quite simple, but you have a very rhythmic da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The opening figure of the piano, accompanied by flute punctuations, leads to the main theme. And then the flute does what you do with the drunken sailor bit, and then the piano then goes hooray and up she rises in the left hand. So the piano actually takes the theme over for the next 4 bars while the flute continues to punctuate. And then they have this very funky idea. This is the chords, which are all built up in fourths with very jazzy chords at bar 13. And then another statement of the theme, which is like an exuberant variation of it, with the piano thumping things down in octaves very low on the piano. And that's where the flute flutter tonguing comes in as well. And this leads to this dramatic new idea, all stops and starts and flutter tonguing, which is repeated. So we've got like a little B section there. And then the theme returns on the flute, answered again by the piano before the jazzy chords return, a very extrovert finish. Now, what I've done a worksheet. I think Sarah may have told you about this, but there's a Dropbox link which we're putting into the chat, and it's got a whole lot of stuff in it. And one of the things it's got in is the notes which I'm giving you now. It's like a potted version of those. The other thing I'm giving you, though, which you may be pleased to hear, is a piano accompaniment without any backing. In other words, just the piano with a click on the front, and you won't get that anywhere else. So you can actually download that for free, and you've got a piano accompaniment to this piece, just so the student gets used to playing with just piano. The chordal language in this piece is very interesting. It's much more sophisticated than I realised. I've actually got a picture of the chords here coming up. It's nearly all seconds, ninths, and 6/9 chords. And I'm actually going to show you a picture of the piano chords that are used in this piece, but also play them for you as you see them. So here they come. Aren't they unusual? So I mean, that's the chords of the piece. So I'm quite a jazz composer. I realise that these are actually very jazzy chords. You've got that in your bunch of things, by the way. Your worksheet includes these chords and the recording as well. So if you're just interested in finding out about some of the chordal language that I use, this is a good start. It's actually got a description of each chord as well. The piano accompaniment which I mentioned, this is what it sounds like. I've actually supplied that to you on Dropbox. So this is just the piano. So you can tell from that country the structure is very clear suddenly. You can hear how those elements come back and all that. But the structure is quite intricate in its own little way. Anyway, that piano accompaniment is available for you to download on the Dropbox folder. Now, I've got a funny thing here. I'm just trying to work out how I can move this. Maybe I can't. Oh yeah, I can do it by escape. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to do this here for myself. Oh, come on, escape. No, not going to worry. What I was going to say was, if you like the concert collection for flute, and indeed I haven't mentioned Micro Jazz Flute Collection, of which there are two, and they're very popular and still used all the time, but there's a book you may not have come across, which I'm very pleased with, called the Sonatina for Flute and Piano. Now this is beyond grades 7 and 8, I would think. It's getting up into licentiate territory, but for those of you who've got more ambitious flute students, it's worth knowing about this. And how's that? Can you hear me? That's a sonatina for flute and piano. That's what it looks like. I thought you might be quite interested to know what's happening here. Here we go. Just the beginning of it. So it's a lovely performance of that. That's on YouTube. There are a number of performances of the Sonatina on YouTube, but this is a particularly good one. And it's a lovely piece. And the third movement is incredibly fast. It's like one of the fastest flute and piano pieces you'd have heard. And this was originally written for students in New Zealand. And so it's played by teenagers, and it's still being played. It was written in 1976, can you believe it? So most of you weren't even born in 1976, I can tell. But it's still being played in New Zealand all these years later. But that version was for 2 violins and piano. But I made this arrangement for flute and piano, and it always goes down very well whenever it's played. So I just like to draw your attention to that, because you might not have come across that. So now going on to our next piece. This is also for flute, a piece called A Walk by the Sea. And this is grade 2, so this is much easier. And this is from the flute collection, Microjazz Flute Collection 1. And this was written in 1987, so again it goes back quite a way. And all of these pieces are about grade 1 to 3 level. And again, a very popular book since it first appeared, and it's got a whole lot of attractive contemporary styles. This does not have backing tracks, by the way, whereas the concert collection does. So preparing for an examination, there's a performance on YouTube which is really good, and I'm just going to show you this because again, it's worth hunting out performances you like the sound of and letting your student hear them. So let's see if I can get this to play for me. Maybe not. Hang on, I'm just going to go back and exit and just see if I can get this to play for me again. Maybe I just have to wait a few seconds. But, oh, here we go. Here we go, I think. If it doesn't work, that's what it looks like. Exam pieces grade 2, B2. I may just have to hit the space bar more than once. Hang on a minute. It really doesn't want to work, but that's fine. Preparing for an examination for this piece, start by getting your student to see the performance on YouTube. That's the one I'm referring to. So I'm not playing to you at the moment. For some reason it doesn't want to play for me, but some common sense tips on this. The performer in the video clip breathes very specifically. There's a quick breath at the end of bar 4, a longer gap, and then another breath at bar 8. In other words, if you look at the phrasing, you'll discover that the breathing is very much reflects the phrasing. And also there are some slowdowns in the performance on YouTube which I think work very well. Now what I might do, I wouldn't mind trying to find this for you because it is worth seeing. So I'm just going to exit here for a second, see if this works for me. I'm going to go to the YouTube site. I think I'm right in saying this. Hang on a minute. Not the YouTube, the Dropbox site rather. Just so I can find this for you directly. Here we go, ABRSM, you never know. And it's A Walk by the Sea. Oh, that's the accompaniment. Yeah, so maybe I'm not going to be in luck at this point. Anyway, not to worry. Okay. Right, so here we go. So you've got this in your notes, by the way, though. So if you find the YouTube clip which says ABRSM, the one that I showed the picture of, and then look at the breathing, you'll see that there's a very useful lesson to be learned for students for seeing how this might be breathed. Is that the way to put it? The way how it might be breathed. And dynamics again. Start MP no louder. This is quite a soft piece. Really come up and down expressively where the crescendo is marked. Drop down to piano bar 9. In other words, look carefully at the dynamics and make sure that you follow them closely, because in fact it's a very expressive piece, and if you do that, I think for an examiner but also for an audience, people will really warm to your performance. And take your time over the end. It's a very expressive ending. Here's a picture of the music. Now, so I wonder if this will play for me. It might do. Oh no, it won't. So I'm just going to go back. But I just want to, yeah. So if you look at the music here, you can see that I think she breathes at the end of bar 4. This is the performance on the, so although it's split up into phrases, you obviously don't breathe at the end of each phrase, but you take a 4-bar phrase. And then what's rather nice, you end up breathing at the end of bar 8, and there's a slight slowdown on the performance as well. And then the next one is a 6-bar phrase. It actually goes from bar 9 all the way to bar 14. And so what's rather nice about this piece is the asymmetrical element of the second phrase there. You've got an 8-bar phrase followed by 6. And then you get the sort of rather climactic part of the piece, if you like. This is from bar 15. And again, that's then 4-bar phrases. And then at the end of 22, it is a slight edging back in the tempo and a good breath, because what you want to do is hold that last note as long as you can. So again, looking at the music, you can, and then listening to the recording, you can really, I think, teach your student a lot about how this can be breathed in the most expressive way possible, and not just breathing based on the end of a phrase, but actually based on one's interpretation of longer phrases. What was that? That's interesting. Oh, this is the piano accompaniment. I'm just going to play this. Now that, I did a free performance of that. That's not done to a click or anything. So that's a real piano accompaniment done in free time. And I think your flute players will love playing with that. That's on your downloads as well. There's a free download of that piano accompaniment, which again doesn't exist anywhere outside this forum. So I think you'll find that quite useful. But that's a lovely expressive piece, isn't it? Just the piano part. I thought you'd be interested in seeing what the chords of this piece are. Look at that. A minor 9 is the first chord, but the second chord is C major 7 flat 5 over F sharp. I mean, it is like a proper jazz chart as this one. F sharp minor 9 flat 5. What? Anyway, you've got those chords to look at, but if you're interested in knowing more about jazz flute, if you like, this is quite an interesting chord chart. That's just all the chords in the piece as it happens, but it is funny, when I played them, that's what they were. So that's why some of the time when students are playing my pieces, they're getting a much richer experience than they're expecting, because harmonically there's actually quite sophisticated things going on, and that's what this looks like here. So the chords are very jazz influenced, and here are most of them. Now, if you like that, you may be interested to know about Flute Collection 2, and there are 33 pieces in Flute Collection 2, so it's a huge collection. And they probably go up about grade 4, 5, 6. So again, if you haven't got that, it's worth having a look for that. Now, what have I got written here? Sarah, can you read that? I'm getting this thing at the top of my screen all the time, so I can't see the top of my own screen. What I'll do is see if I can move this like this. There we go.
It's SoundCloud. Oh yeah, you got.
Yeah. What's interesting, I didn't realize, but SoundCloud has some very, very good flute performances on it, and one of them is all of Microjazz Collection 2. So somebody's put them up there, and then I've put them onto my site. But this is Promises from Microjazz Collection 2. I thought I'd just show you this. Here's the music and the recording from SoundCloud, if I get this right. So you can tell lovely performances of those, and they're all there. So if you go to SoundCloud, it's Christopher Norton Microjazz on SoundCloud, you'll find all of Microjazz Collection 2 there. And I'm going to try and get more. If any of you are flute teachers and have what you think are fantastic performances of any of these pieces, let me know, because we can always put your performances on SoundCloud as well. Okay, now this is very exciting. That's a banana sandwich. And in fact, I'm from New Zealand, and banana sandwiches are very popular in New Zealand. Are they popular in Australia as well, Sarah? Yeah, I thought so. So unaccountably, the piece for oboe, which I'm talking about today, is called Banana Sandwiches. And heaven knows why I've called it that, but anyway, that's what it is. And this is from Microjazz for oboe, and it's grade 5, I believe. Written in 1988, and this is again a 14-piece collection, and it's had lots of performances and uses since it first came out, and it features a whole variety again of attractive contemporary popular styles. Here is again a nice performance of this from YouTube. So and what I liked about this is this, you'll be amazed by this, the girl Emily is playing both parts. She's playing the piano accompaniment and the oboe part, so I was quite impressed by that. So that's great banana-themed video, isn't it, all around? But doesn't she do a great job? That's her playing both parts and providing banana graphics as well. So there you go. Now this is what the oboe part looks like, and I think I've done the same thing. I've provided you with a piano accompaniment for this with a click on the front, so that you've got that as a download as well, which is quite useful to have. Here's the oboe part, and preparing for examination for this, start by getting your student to see Emily's YouTube performance, I think, because she's got some of the sort of fun aspect of this. The piano part is quite dry and rhythmic, but the oboe part plays beautifully legato phrases throughout. So each should have a natural rise and fall, and there shouldn't be any bumps in the line. Each last note should come back out gracefully, not really staccato, but just well shaped away. So don't go dee dum dum dee dee da. So again, it's the same with piano. Don't bump the last note just because it's marked staccato. Make it a very soft staccato. Dynamics are very interesting in this piece. It starts MP, then the section mark MF, which crescendos to forte, and then back down again. So the whole thing has a kind of arch shape. So it's loudest in the middle, and a long diminuendo piano even lower at the end. And as I mentioned with the flute, the level of articulation is very specific. I'm not trying to put an accent on there, but I'm just saying it's marked very specifically how you phrase this. And there's two examples which you could get your student to just practice a little exercise in isolating the phrasing and making sure that you really are reading it right. And there's my little face here. If you put all that together and articulation, phrasing exactly as written, you'll be doing it right. Now, composition matters. This is a reggae piece. I don't know if you realize that. So you've got a typically syncopated very syncopated left-hand part and offbeat chords in the right hand, and it builds an intensity in some chord variations, but it's basically all about the groove. This isn't really, the harmonies in this are not particularly significant. The structure of it is very straightforward. It's an A minor, and it has a main idea which is a repeat with variation bars 1 to 8, a change to C major, and a surprise 6/8 bar happens as well at the end of the B section, and then a dramatic pause on E before the restatement of brief coda. So that's in your notes again, just if students need to know something about the structure. Here's the chords used in this piece. You can see they're very straightforward. A minor, D minor 7, C, D minor F, E5. Now E5 is where you have no third in the chord, and I quite like the sound of E5, so that is a feature. And then there is an A7 flat 9 and an A5 at the end. So all the chords of the piece are marked there as well for you to have as a reference point. There's one minor 7 chord and 2 5 chords where there's no third, as I've marked. And what I've done, here's the piano accompaniment only. It's included in your freebies, and this is again quite interesting to hear. This is pure reggae. And so on. Now, what I thought I'd draw your attention to, you might not know about this. This has been out for quite a long time, but it's a very nice book called Stepping Out for Oboe and Piano, which is all pieces in probably about grade 5 to 7 region, I think, perhaps even slightly easier. I haven't got any recordings of these, but the book does exist and it's out there through Boozy and Hawks, and you might just like to have a look and see if you can find that, Stepping Out for Oboe and Piano. There's one of the pieces from Stepping Out for Oboe and Piano. You can sort of see the level of that. It's quite straightforward, but interesting piano accompaniment, and in a kind of blues style, this particular one. So there's a nice range of pieces in this little book, which might be unknown to you. So you should sort of look for that. Stepping Out. So there's an example. Now, finally, I'm going on to the concert collection for alto saxon piano. And this is Black Sheep of the Family. And what you may or may not realize, I think you probably do realize, this is actually a really sort of humorous version of Black Sheep of the Family. Yes, Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's actually Mary Had a Little Lamb is the basis of it. Because this is concert collection is among other things, using like nursery rhymes. And indeed, one of the nursery rhymes that's used is called Lavender's Kind of Blue, which I think is rather nice. But this one here is no, I'm being silly. It's not Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's Bar Bar Black Sheep, of course. What am I saying? There is a Mary Had a Little Lamb version as well, but that's a different one. It's called The Tragedy of Mary. But this one is called Black Sheep of the Family. And it's for grade 6 alto sax, written in 2008. 15 pieces in the collection altogether. And this has got backing tracks, and you'll find this on Spotify and all other digital platforms as well. And again, spirituals, folk songs, classical themes, and songs by Stephen Foster. So you've got a nice mixture of things. And the new look, as I said, is because everything has been repackaged. So you'll see here, you'll hear the alto saxophone and piano, alto saxophone and backing, and then the backing only is what you hear on the Spotify site and so on. And that's the wrong name. But the performance of Black Sheep of the Family, not Drunken Sailor, is done by a very good sax player who's a friend of mine in Britain. This is years ago, And he, again, I like how he does it. He's quite a classical player in his approach to it, but I think this sounds really good. Let's see if I can get it to play for me. Here we go. Have you any woe? So that's tricky. So that's a proper, again, it's quite funky gospel, and it's really good fun. Preparing this for an examination, get your student to listen to the recorded performance. That's a very good performance, and that's the one on all the digital platforms. Common tense sips, keep the grace notes light. There's a lot of grace notes in this piece. Keep them as light as you can. And general play lighter rather than heavier, and shape each phrase that it tapers off. I mean, just very common sense observations to make, but you can hear the way he does it. He does shape every phrase very nicely and doesn't have too strident a sound either. Look at the overall dynamics. It starts at an easygoing MF and only gets to forte at bar 8, then drops down again. So, and then bar 13, it's really smoking, I put here. So it's really, you really go for it. And FF at the very end, so it really has a dramatic and audience-pleasing ending as well. So they're all on your worksheet as well, these sort of little tips. Again, phrasing, look at some of this. Again, taking these phrases in isolation, I've got them on your worksheet, and just trying each phrase out with all the dynamics that are marked in there as well, and in the last one in particular, you'll be doing it right. So if you pull that all together, you'll be doing it right. There's our little face here. And what I'm suggesting on this, composition matters, this is a driving, funky rock version of Bar Bar Black Sheep. It's extrovert and it's really fun, and it should be done as a fun piece for sure. Structure. The first 8 bars are my invention. That's all me. Leads to Bar Bar Black Sheep being quoted on the piano, but very briefly. So in fact, you could almost miss it. So sometimes people play this piece and think, why is it called Black Sheep of the Family? But in fact, look on the piano at bar 9, you discover that there is Bar Bar Black Sheep being quoted. And then it's quite funny. It says Bar Bar Black Sheep is quoted in the piano before it's derailed. And then a return to the first idea, that's my main idea, before a dramatic 1-bar coda. The piece is in B-flat major concert, and it uses a variety of gospel-influenced chords, including chromatic runs and unison passages. Here's the chords used in this piece. Now you can see already these are more straightforward, but there's quite a lot of chord inversions and also chords with a different bass note, like B-flat 7 over D, C minor over F, E-flat over G, B-flat over D, which is very typical of gospel. So this is a gospel number. I had a friend, by the way, years ago who was a very fine musician, but also very funny. He's become quite a well-known English humorous writer subsequently for things like Private Eye. And he said to me he thinks all the worst music in the world is written in B-flat. So I thought I'd just mention that. And this piece is in B-flat. I think it's because there's a lot of brass band music and organ music by Rega is in B-flat. But it's a theory. So I've used the worst key in the world. The chords used are quite simple with lots of inversions, as I've put. And what I've supplied you again is the piano accompaniment. Now, it's quite interesting just hearing the piano by itself, which you've got on your downloads. Here it is. So quite a tricky piano part, and it's all these. It's what the Americans call 16th note syncopation. So the syncopations are all semiquaver syncopations. I know there's one other performance I've seen on YouTube by a young man, and it's not that accurate. In other words, it is quite difficult to get it dead right. So I'd suggest you go to the Spotify one first, and don't just look on YouTube, because there aren't many performances of this on YouTube yet. But it'd be nice to see some accurate ones from some of your students, perhaps. If you like that, you may be interested to know that there's a second book. There's the rest of the concert collection, but there's also 2 books of alto saxophone microjazz. And again, these are big collections, and there's no backing tracks, but they are very nice piano accompaniments, and it's worth you knowing they exist. And Big Time, this is from Microjazz for Alto Saxophone Book 2, I believe. So that's from Microjazz collection, Alto Sax collection 2, I believe. So it's worth looking for those to add to your collection of saxophone books to go along with the concert collection. So what I've talked about here today is concert collection flute, flute collection 1 Microjazz, that is, Microjazz for oboe, and concert collection for alto saxophone. So there's the 4 books. And I've also made references to other books, which are, again, on the site. This is the Dropbox site where you can download things. I've got the covers of the books I've referred to as well, the other things like the Sonatina for flute and so on. Links, just to quickly make it clear how this works. Microjazz is published by Boozy and Hawkes, and ChristopherNorton.com is the Boozy and Hawkes site for me, so that any of the ones that I've talked about which are called Microjazz you'll find there, as well as the concert collection. In fact, all the books we've talked about today are Boozy and Hawkes, therefore you'll find them all noted on ChristopherNorton.com if you're looking for the actual books. Distributed in Australia by Hal Leonard, I think, but I'm not quite sure, but I mean they're easy enough to find anyway. Facebook.com, Christopher Norton Composer. You probably know about this, but if not, come and join me there. I think my 2 Facebook pages have like 10,000 people between them, so but they're nearly all piano teachers, which is rather nice, or instrumental teachers, I should add. It's not just piano, but teachers anyway. YouTube has lots of composer performances, student performances, and I've mentioned some of these today, and I'll be trying to get more Woodwind things up on the YouTube site now that I've been alerted to all you Woodwind teachers. The Spotify artist link, I've got that in my notes, but it's a great big long thing there, but it's easy. All you need to do is look up Christopher Norton on Spotify, and you'll find all the things I've talked about today in terms of concert collections there. And there's a final picture of me. So that's it. So I noticed there's quite a lot of things in the chat. So should I go to that, Sarah, and perhaps just see if there's anything that's worth picking up on?
Most of it's me. But anybody
well, first of all,
feel free to add questions to the chat or unmute. If you wish to say something, be warned if your video is on when you unmute that this is currently live. If your video is off, that's not a problem. But yes, I had a couple of questions about some of the flute pieces at the beginning.
Sure. You had some, did you say, or you noticed
Oh, I
some on
put them
the
in the
chat?
chat.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I just got too confused.
Um,
Specifically in the first one, the Drunken Sailor.
yeah.
I was wondering, the girl who played it used a very heavy attack, but you use a Chinuto sign on the sample you showed us. You used the
Yeah.
Chinuto sign. Now, did you expect those to be with a stronger attack, or like were you using Chinuto in a specific way, or you just meant don't cut them short?
You talking about the last note of the phrase?
Back in your present slideshow, you showed a sample from Drunken Sailor, and at the end of
Oh,
it,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right
yeah, yeah.
notes in a row, which were Chinutoed. And I thought, is your intention here some sort of mild with extra attack to the note, or is your intention just a more connected sound, or both?
I think that particular one does have quite a lot of attack, and you notice the performance. The one I like is very kind of spirited, if you like, and and in other words, she makes quite a lot of the accents. So I would say, if anything, go down the dramatic route on that particular one. But again, it's worth knowing what the phrasing is written down like, because she is actually doing that. But it's obviously there are interpretations just about how far you push it, if you like. And same with the piano, might say this is marked staccato and accented, but do you play it spiky, or do you try and keep it still rounded? And I'm saying sometimes spiky is good.
And the other question was about the grade 2 flute piece you had there, which had
Yeah.
this incredibly long phrase, which none of my students at grade 2 would be able to manage. Do you have a particular
No.
preferred place for adding emergency breaths for those who can't?
I think you can add them wherever you like in a way, because the phrases are all broken up. But I'm just saying the ideal is the one that's on the recording, which I've marked where they do breathe, where you do a 4-bar phrase basically, and in the middle you do a 6-bar phrase. But what you do is take a good breath and even do a slight slowdown on certain longer notes at the end of a phrase in order to get yourself geared up for the next phrase. But yes, it's true. I mean, students would have to break them up slightly more, perhaps, than that player did. But that's the aim, if you like. I'm just saying, ideally, that's how you'd do it. And I noticed somebody posted something here, which was this is Peter. Was that right? Is this a good video of A Walk by the Sea? Are you there, Peter?
When you were having trouble finding a video link, he posted one.
Oh, that's good. So people have got that. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I'll just click on that, see what comes up. See if oh, here we go. Because this just to quickly refer to that. Yeah, here we go. This is quite impressive. Thank you, Peter. Wang Tong and Lin Shumai. Breath. That's a 6-bar one. I'm rather glad we waited till the end to hear that, because it's very clear, isn't it, how she is doing it and how nice it is. But you can tell as well that if you can't do that, you just have to kind of find a compromised position, if you like. Okay, that's good.
And
one thing I should mention, by the way, to everybody, or two things. I haven't mentioned anything about the connection series in this particular broadcast, because up till now we haven't really had any stuff. But in fact, there are two books for every woodwind instrument and brass instrument coming out on the Connections platforms shortly. They're finished. We're just about to release them. But the other thing I've got, which is amazing, is a wind set. which I'm really pleased with, and that again is worth kind of just keeping in your mind that's coming out, a piece for wind sextet to go alongside. Is it the Janacek piece for wind sextet? There's not that many pieces in the repertoire for that, but these are wonderful set of 6 pieces for wind sextet, which I've done. I like this. I wonder how many piano companies have a death list for composers who do this to them. What is that? Is that you, Sarah?
You mentioned the semiquaver rest in the Barber Black Sheep variation.
Oh yeah.
And there's the death list of composers when we come to an exam, and it's grade 2, but the piano part's licentiate level. So not fair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, the piano parts aren't that hard, but they are stylistically a concept. In other words, you have to understand the style that they're coming from. That's why hearing the piece with the backing track is quite helpful, I think, because you suddenly think, oh yeah, that's where it's come from. Because if you've got a kind of backbeat going in your mind, you're in with a better chance for doing it right. But certainly I can imagine Black Sheep of the Family coming horribly unstuck. And where you actually get to the end of it and think, well, what's worse than this? Oh yeah, playing a Hindemith sonata accompaniment. We haven't mentioned certain other things. These are the ones that are on the syllabus, obviously, but as I said, there are microjazz books for, there's one for bassoon, there's also recorder microjazz and recorder ensemble microjazz. And the connections books, by the way, we do have also for recorder. So I've got more recorder music coming out shortly as well. As I said, the worksheet you've got really details all the things I've talked about today, and that's all available for download, as are all the piano accompaniments and the covers of all the books as well, just in case it's worth having those as a reference point.
Just because lots of the people who would be here would teach ABRSM, and ABRSM has that 4th piece for the current recorded exam, which is a free choice. Can you give us some indication with your Woodwind publications where they would sit in an ABRSM sort of syllabus?
You're talking about microjazz for recorder in particular?
Oh, well, I at the piano session you showed us a collection series and how like level 10 was equivalent to ABRSM grade 8.
Well, yeah, I think the microjazz are all banded. If you find a piece like the oboe piece, which is a grade 5, it's going to be clustered on either side of grade 5. The whole book is. Is that the way to say it? Because I think the microjazz flute collection, there are 2 of them, and one of them is grade 1 to 3, and the next one's kind of grade 4 to 6. So it's an easier book and then a more difficult book. And I'm doing the same with the Connections Woodwind books. There's going to be an easier book and a more advanced book, if you like, but they're still not going beyond grade 6.
Okay.
Again, I can do subsequent to this, I can try and figure that out and provide you with additional information which I can give to Sarah to disseminate to people.
I'm sure that that would be very helpful to have some suggestions for, like, for grade 4 ABRSM as an extra piece, which of you.
Absolutely, yeah, because I didn't entirely realize that. Yeah.
In our group, it may not be possible. That may not be an easy task.
No, but you could let me know what instruments are in your group, and I can easily put together a sort of an approximate list. I didn't really realize that there is a free choice element then these days.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's often a question asked in the group. I don't know what piece to do for my 4th piece. And I'm sure that
it's an easy answer. You just need to do a Christopher Norton piece, but I need to tell you which grade it is.
Well, that's right. So having an indication of what sort of grade each one is, that would open more students, more teachers to be confident using them. I think one of the standard replies we have is, we'll just use something from an old syllabus, then it's in that grade. But sometimes for teachers it can be hard to pinpoint which grade their piece should be in.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm trying to work my way through, I mean, this is going to take a while, but I have started, it doesn't take me long, is to do piano accompaniments for each book, for all the books. So you've got piano accompaniments available as well. And those will also go up on Spotify and so on. So because obviously microjazz doesn't have backing tracks, so therefore you're relying on a piano accompanist to kind of play along with you. So that's my aim, is to try and do what I've done for you today, but across each book. Because if I did 33 pieces from Microjazz Collection 2, say, I could do the piano accompaniments in one sitting, because I know them well, and then have a little click at the front, and then basically you've got something to practice with. So that's another thing which is worth knowing. So that plus the grading thing, I think, are the two things which are my next jobs.
Well, the accompaniments would be helpful, at least at the moment with COVID. There's some leniency about having a live accompanist, but having gradings, that would be super helpful. And I guess a piece was in.
Yeah, so we may even do another session which is literally doing that, so
that'd be very helpful.
Yeah. So any other questions from people who are logged on? I mean, it's always nice to see and hear you if you wanted to come on with any sort of comments or observations. I'm hoping that you will all kind of explore the sonatina. One nice story about the sonatina for flute and piano, by the way. I'm very good friends with a girl who originally was from Canada and was taught by my wife, but then moved to New Zealand, and she ended up in Auckland, and she's blind from birth. That's another thing that's worth saying. And I saw her probably about 4 or 5 years ago in Auckland, and she'd learnt the entire sonatina from a Braille score. And I played it with her, and she played the flute part perfectly, and I hacked my way through the piano accompaniment rather poorly. In other words, she was a lot better than I was. But she had completely nailed the flute part from Braille, which was quite impressive. But after this session, you should look up the sonatina, particularly the performance which I played you today on YouTube, because it's a lovely piece, and it's got a lovely slow movement, which is a bit like, to overstate, like Shostakovich, you might say, and then the finale, which is fast and furious and a great crowd pleaser, and it's a nice concert piece which lasts probably about 10 minutes. So it's just a nice logical extension to what we've looked at today, which are going from grade 2 to grade 7, I think it was, but this is going beyond those.
There's a few thank yous in the chat, and Angela said thank you. Helen says she found the flute parts very helpful. Edwina says thank you. She also mentioned earlier that one of your pieces she's currently teaching, and Edwina says you're hugely popular in her studio due to your fabulous composition.
Well, there is I should tell you one other thing, by the way. It was Edwina a flute player, a flute teacher? Is that right?
Yes, I am. I just unmuted myself.
Yeah. Oh, there you are, Edwina. What I was going to say was something which has happened recently, because this happens to me quite often. Did you know that there's a book of flute duets, just to accompany flute?
No, I didn't.
It's called Microjazz Flute Duets, and what was interesting is that I recently got contacted by somebody who'd arranged them with guitar accompaniment.
Oh, how beautiful!
And I'm just trying to think where I put them, because this is I thought these were wonderful. I'm just going. I'm assuming that I put them into Dropbox. But anyway, I'll keep in touch with everybody, because in fact we're going to put them out. We like them so much. It was really nice to have. They've got simple guitar accompaniments for 2 flutes. I thought what a nice combination that is. And in fact, the guitar parts are easy enough. You could almost adapt them for piano as well, and I'll look into that. But there's flute duets, and clarinet duets, and saxophone duets, which. Again, I'd like them, but I'd almost forgotten I'd written them, and then these people said, "Oh, we love them," and we've provided accompaniments for them as well. So,
what level are they? What level are they?
I think they're probably about grade 3 to 5. I mean, they're not hard, but they're originally written just for two instruments, just unaccompanied flutes. So they're quite a useful little book. We're in Canada at the moment, by the way. I don't know if any of you know Canada, but we're staying in a hotel in Oakville, it's called, and it's actually above a Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons are the famous place that does coffee and donuts and stuff, so that's what we're doing next. having our breakfast.
Well, I'll give one final call out. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Or more correctly, you can tag Mr. Norton in Facebook as well, and he'll usually see it in our group.
Yeah, and if you've got any comments or questions, you can always address them to my Facebook composer page, Christopher Norton Composer, and I will answer you. But also, I'll post up anything which I think might be of interest to everybody in terms of things like the flute duets with guitar accompaniment, because I can even post up some samples once I find it. It's on my other computer, I think, so I'm not quite sure where they are at the moment. Hang on, just while you're on, I'm just going to go into email for a second and look up flute duets. Great. Well, I mean, I've never done a Woodwind session before, but you can tell the Woodwind stuff is nice, and there's quite a body of work there. So it'd be nice to keep in touch with everybody.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Christopher. Actually, I am a flautist. That's my main instrument, and I was quite unaware of all of your wide range of compositions until this very moment. So thanks for sharing, and thanks for all the extra theory and general knowledge stuff that's useful for us for teaching generally and teaching these works. So if we can silently or unmute and give Mr. Norton a round of applause. And thank you very much. Have a good day, have a good night, have a good afternoon, and we'll see you all another time.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Great. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.